And action. Welcome, everybody. This is PnP Weekly, episode 78. This is so scripted, super organized, and everything just magically works. It is April 6th, 2020. And we do have a visitor, on the call as well. Before we go there and get the latest news from our visitor, let me do a quick intro. So PnP Weekly is all about going through what has happened within the Office 365, Microsoft 365 and the community side of the house within the past week. We record these typically on Mondays, and it goes live already on Tuesday, and that's something what we intentionally want to keep as short as possible so stuff is fresh. And we also cover the latest articles from the community side. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a program manager from the OneDrive SharePoint platform team, and with me as a co-host is Waldek. Who are you?
Hi, everybody. My name is Valdek Mastekas. I am head of product at Rancor, and today we have a guest. He has a rabbit. He says of himself that he is a mediocre bump owner, and he's also the person who came up with PnPjs. Yes. Let's have a round of applause for Patrick Rodgers.
Yay!
Hi.
And the crowd goes wild.
Yes, the whole crowd. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back on the show. It only took releasing a major version to get back on the show, so I assume I'll get invited back in another couple of years.
Yeah. So I can't remember when Patrick was on a show, probably in first 10 episodes or something like that, if I do remember correctly, something like that.
It's been a while, but I'm excited to be back now.
Yeah. And you have
that is what matters.
Exactly. And you were actually away on a family break pretty recently as well. So good to have you back on the work. Obviously, family health always first, then family, and then hobbies and work after that. Can you update us on the situation? What happened?
Yeah, well, we had a kid. Let's
not go too much details.
Yeah,
there.
So, well, when a man loves a woman, and we welcomed a second son into our family, and so I was away for a month. Microsoft has a very wonderful family leave policy for men and women, or both partners, and whatever their genders might be. And then so we actually get 12 weeks. So I took the first 4 weeks to stay home, and then I go back to work, and then I'll go back off for 8 weeks, which maximizes with like my wife's plan and everything else. The amount of time we can stay home, which right now is sort of funny because we're all staying home all the time.
That's true.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah, whether you like it or not. So, it's good, the right thing to do, but it's we're all adjusting like everybody else in the world is adjusting right now. Yeah. So,
I think it even for me, who's been working 6 years from home, this has introduced a lot of changes. Absolutely, the working methods with everybody else is different. And well, just out of curiosity, actually, on that topic, what's the biggest change you've seen, both of you, with what you've seen within the past weeks related on working from home? I know, Waldek, you've been working from home for a long time as well.
Yeah, correct. So I've been working from home now for a bit more than 4 years. The biggest changes, and I mean, it's not that the Netherlands where I live is on a lockdown, so we are officially allowed to go out just as long as you stay away from everybody else. But we basically try to not do that if there is no reason to. So for me, that means primarily, one, being more indoors myself, and then two, everybody else is at home too. So I'm not alone the whole day. Yeah. Right? So these are the two biggest things. And then the other one is, which is kind of third world luxury inconvenience, is their online delivery of your shopping, like that is full because everybody's doing that now. So you basically need to go yourself pick up your stuff, right? But these are really like the only things that I actually changed for me. So given the scope of things, it's nothing.
From a work perspective, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Patrick, you?
Yeah, kind of the same experience. We're not on a legal lockdown either, just a strong recommendation. But we've been staying in. I mean, we're only going out when we need to, trying to get a little exercise, like a walk around, whatever, just to be out of the house for half an hour or whatever, something. But yeah, going to pick up food and you know, if we have doctor checkups with the baby and stuff, we still have doctor checkups to go to and things. But other than that, yeah, just staying in and, you know, working from home I've been doing it, I think, a similar amount of time I was trying to think 4 or 5 years, something like that. But it's, you know, it's roughly the same, but it's also different with everybody at home. And, you know, you instead of just the house being quiet and it's me and the rabbits, it's me and everybody. So, you know, I do, you know, even though I'm working, I do try and, you know, hop down, help out a little bit here and there. Because I know, and again, this is not a hardship by any means, right? But part of our plan was our first son was still going to be in daycare some of the time while, you know, we were home, which, you know, would help with naps and all that sort of stuff. And that's obviously not happening, which, you know, it's again, not a hardship compared to what's going on in the world, but it's just an example of having to adjust and things being a little bit different, you know, as we're all going through this. So,
yeah. And in my case, I think the biggest challenge is interesting challenge. So I've been having also the luxury of working home for 6 years already, or something like that. Haven't actually calculated, but one of the things what's been kind of an obvious is that in the past there was always this kind of a day period where I could actually be, let's say, in quotes, creative, and you can go out with the dog. There's nobody else let's say, demanding your attention. There's nothing extra to do. And then I have the typical 8 hours to work on. So that gives me then flexibility on doing other stuff as well, and then being creative or testing things and coding something, and then okay, now I'll concentrate on work. But with the current situation, I'm responsible of the homeschooling between the household from morning until like the midday or 1 p.m. and then start working from there. Because then obviously the evening meetings with Redmond people are taking over then anyway. So it's an interesting thing to balance out on the new way of thinking as well. And then homeschooling is always fun. So
yeah, and then I guess the interesting thing is that, like, given the current state of things, it's actually pretty neat that we can still do our work. We can still work,
and that's quite rare actually. So yeah.
No, we're very, very lucky to be able to do that from home. And I can only hope that it'll encourage more working from home for people of all varieties. I mean, we're very lucky in tech, but I'm hoping there's a lot of other positions that can get a little bit more flexibility after this. We could all see, hey, working from home works and is okay, and you know, it's not the end of the world. So I know there's been talk about, you know, folks with disabilities or who have mobility issues. You know, if they don't have to go into the office, that's just a win for everybody, right? You know, they have an easier day. They still get to work. They're still getting their work done. You know, but also their lives are now easier. Other people's lives are easier. So
absolutely. And this is a super hardcore way of validating the cloud technologies as well. So because nobody obviously wasn't prepared for this kind of a massive uptake. What was it? 750% increase on the cloud in the public public messaging.
On the Microsoft services, yeah. Which is, I mean, astounding to think how much load was already there in usage, and to jump that much that quickly, and that things didn't collapse is a testament to all the great work folks are doing. I mean, it's really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, coming back on that, obviously that's the day-to-day life for everybody right now. But then let's focus slightly on the technology, and Patrick, back on you. So can you, what is actually a role? What do you do? So how would people know you, and what are the things? What's matter for you? What makes you tick?
And you've asked like 20 different things.
Yeah, I was like, so let's try and parse that out. Not a complicated question at all. So I would say yes, 12 lions, and also yes, no, and yes. I think that got them.
Thank you.
No, so I am a senior program manager with Microsoft FastTrack. So my role is pretty fluid. So FastTrack for folks that may not be familiar, FastTrack is a group, an organization within Microsoft that is works with customers to bring them, to fast track them into our services online, and we have certain workloads that we are part of our portfolio, so to speak, and other stuff would be kind of out of scope, or we'd bring a partner in. But our role is really, if you're a company and you want to, whether you've been on Microsoft and left and come back, you've never been anywhere in the cloud and you want to come to Microsoft, or if you are already a Microsoft customer. So we get this a lot where you've got Exchange, you're doing email, O365 email, and now you want to do SharePoint or to do OneDrive. So adding additional workloads to what you already have. So we do a lot of that. And my role within all of that is pretty fluid. So it's really, I help out and I hope in a lot of different ways. But working with, I help some managing changes to the FastTrack program itself. I'm a little piece of that. That's a big puzzle that I'm a small piece of. I help. I'm working to drive some open source stuff within FastTrack a little bit. I'm now that I've come back and we're in the middle. So FastTrack was tasked in the middle of this COVID response with really helping folks rapidly, especially universities or healthcare institutions, rapidly get onto the cloud and stay productive or able to, in healthcare terms, serve what's going on when maybe some of their on-premises systems or even other cloud systems. I don't want to go into U.S. healthcare too much, but other cloud systems may not have been working or ready for this kind of a load. So we've ramped up a ton of stuff, and it's, I'll say, been frankly amazing to come back to work in the middle of all this happening and see what Microsoft is doing is really kind of inspiring, and seeing everybody's trying to help, everybody's trying to figure out how to remove barriers, make things easier, get rid of friction, and make it work, both for our customers and, these institutions, that we've identified, like healthcare, for example, is a big one where they're a priority, of course, right? But the other thing that I think is incredible is to see all of the Microsoft leadership, like top to bottom. Their number one message is always take care of yourself first, right?
Yeah.
Take care of yourself and your family and your health, and then take care of our customers, right? So customers are very important, but if you're sick or your family's sick or you're out, right? And then you can't do anything. But to see that message, I think is wonderful for me as a human being, but also I think as a company is really a strong statement to where our values are. And that's just, we're kind of drifting off of your question, but you asked a weird question, so I'm going to answer it the way. So that's been great. So I'm part of FastTrack, part of making all that happen. Doing my little piece. I don't want to oversell myself there. And then I also do some other things. So we have a little bit of it's on hold, just obviously with all the COVID stuff. But one of the things I also try and do is look around at what's going on inside FastTrack, and if there's processes or things that can be improved, I try and champion those. So we've got right now a thing that we've been using for 2-3 years, something like that, called the remediation checklist. That is just an Excel spreadsheet that we pass around to our customers that has guidance. And, if you're going to do SharePoint, you need to do, here's a list of all these things you need to go do, right? Yeah. And it's great. It's awesome. People use it. It's very, very helpful, but it's a spreadsheet we're passing around, right? It says challenges. We can't get it updated, stuff like that. So I try and identify those things and then figure out who to work with and get, progress in those areas to make everybody's lives a little bit easier, both customer and for us ourselves. Like if we can make our work, easier for folks. So I think maybe that answered your question. Also, I did the PnPjs thing.
Well, so Patrick has been really active on the community side of the house as well. So open source community, PnPjs, not only PnPjs, but that grew to be your project, or you created the PnPjs at some point. But you've been helping on other stuff as well. So within the past 5 years or something like that?
I don't even know anymore. Every time I say a number, you're like, no, it's been like 3 more years than you think it has. So.
Yeah, that's true. That is so
I'm
true.
like, we've been doing this about 2 years. It's like, no.
It's got to be more. It's got to be
So
more.
let's see. Good example was that.
4.
I think it's 4, yeah, because it's more than three, slightly above 3 years when the SPFX was released, and then it was previewed. The GA was previewed. We were doing before that, so it's more than 4.
Also, the sum is easier. I joined Rancor in March, and March 16, 17, there was the Dev Kitchen in Brussels. And I joined PnP around the same time. And Patrick, you would start working on PnPjs, or at least what would end up being that around the same time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
that was our hidden agenda, because SPFX was not yet being released, but we were already executing a public JavaScript or TypeScript development program for SharePoint. And there was a lot of people like MVPs like, why would you do JavaScript?
Yeah, why are you doing? I remember, there was a lot of, why are you doing this? Why would you care about this? Why are you showing this to us? And then I think it was 5-6 months later, they're like, oh, I get it now. And it's like, yeah, we were trying to help, we're trying.
I mean, I cannot tell you why,
accident.
but yeah.
Exactly. There's no accidents. There's just a bigger plan.
There was a lot of trust us. But it worked out, I think. I think SPFX has been a success. I don't think with PnPjs we could take all the credit for the success there, but,
Not all, but the maturity.
Kidding, of course.
No, but the PnPjs has absolutely helped on let's say, more traditional SharePoint developers transforming the SharePoint APIs, and not just that, also the non-SharePoint developers, because I think it's actually a nice wrapper to understand how the SharePoint REST API actually works, rather than trying to find.
Well, to be honest, you don't want to really understand how it works. You just want it to work.
Well. Exactly. Well, that's the thing. That's with any API, right? There's certain things from a development perspective. There's authentication. Authentication just has to work. It cannot be difficult, because that's not a primary thing. So you need to be able to authenticate as fast as possible and easily, so you can concentrate on things. And then the second thing is APIs. You need to be easily get access on data, right? So then you can concentrate on, what do I do with this stuff? So,
well, but I guess there are two sides, right? Because one, if you only think in theory, imagine you have all data for compliant API REST, the way it's going to work, and if it matches the standard, it's going to work like that. That is not the reality that we have in SharePoint, because there's things we picked up on over the years, and this is now the official API to work with, and they're not consistent. There are different quirks you have to take into account, and PnPjs abstracts all of these quirks away, so you can just be productive and efficient, and not really think, hey, I'm calling this one. Do I need a request digest? What is a request digest? Why do I need a request digest? And how do I get it? And what's this? And what's that? And there are tons of different things you have to know. And if you don't have that experience, it's going to take you really days to get onboarded, or you use this API and then you're off the blocks within minutes.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that abstraction layers is in an authentication or API wrapper like PnPjs is super important, so that the developers get success feelings, because everything in development is about banging your head against the wall until, now I got it. Well, that was easy. And then another thing, because that's basically how we learn, unfortunately. So that's development, right? Or then you go to Stack Overflow or Google and start searching, or Bing, start searching things on there. So, but having that easy success on, hey, that was easy. I can get data using this kind of an endpoint. Wow, that was easy. Has a super massive impact on people adapting capabilities. So, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody that's worked with SharePoint for a very long time now, that was the goal.
When did you start, by the way? When did you start?
When did I start?
Let's talk about the dinosaurs again. We always go back in dinosaur age.
What was MOSS was
2006.
2007. Yeah, 2006 release. Yeah.
So around that time, I'd done a little bit of stuff before that, but really with the the 2000
they've done that.
The 2007, I ended up working for a company that their thing was pushing public websites on SharePoint.
Yes.
So
that sounds so familiar. I think everybody in this call has done this.
Yeah, so we've all been there, and so did that, and that's how. And that was back. I mean, I'm old, but that was back when the docs we have now are much better than the docs we had then because nothing existed then. And the way you learn
two books, right? There was WSS book and Moz book.
Yeah,
that was it.
But the way you learned was you had a reflector back then, right? And you would just crack open the assemblies. And so, we talk about abstracting things and whatever, but like I wouldn't know what I know now if I hadn't spent years just looking at SharePoint source code. That's how I know how it all works, right? And it's and so I think there's a balance there for developers as they're growing. It's good to be productive quickly. It's good to get your job done and your task done quickly and efficiently, right? That's just makes sense. But I would encourage folks also take the time. You don't have to do this every day or whatever, but understand a little bit deeper. Like if you're a SharePoint developer or a Teams developer or I don't know, whatever developer you are, take a little bit of time to learn that technology a little more deeply, like how it works, why it works the way it does. And a lot of stuff will make a little bit more sense to you, and you'll be able to, when you do encounter a new piece of that technology, you'll understand it a little bit faster, right? Yeah. Like there's stuff when the guys add stuff or the folks add stuff to SharePoint, I kind of already know how they're going to do it, right? Yep. Just because like I know how SharePoint works under the hood, so it's really easy then to
draw conclusions,
draw conclusions, add those methods into PnPjs or understand how those methods are likely implemented because of just how the plumbing works underneath. Now, sometimes you look and you're very wrong
on how why did they did it that way,
done. And so you kind of have to figure stuff out. Which I think is an interesting, Waldeck kind of brought it up a little bit. It's an interesting distinction between sort of the SharePoint API surface and maybe other, like Graph, for example, right? Graph is what's the word I'm looking for? Consistent.
It tended to be consistent. There are certain exceptions.
There's a few little, but it's largely, it's very consistent overall. And SharePoint, is not, right?
It's not.
And
exactly.
And SharePoint has some interesting quirks that you look at. There's certain methods you can't call. You can call them from REST, but you can't, like certain setters don't work because they're waiting for the CSOM context to execute call, right? Which you can't do with REST. So there's these weird little quirks that people are like, well, I can call that method. Why doesn't it work? And it goes back to that, like, well, I've got to tell you the history and this is why, right? It's not just the method's not broken per se. It just wasn't ever written to work this way.
Well, that scenario, yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and hopefully eventually everything will be in Graph and just have that nice, clean, flat, consistent interface over top of everything. But I think, that's a big challenge because it's hard to make, as I've found on a much smaller scale than Graph, just trying to make a consistent, fluent API over SharePoint can be challenging, right? Because of some of the quirks. So there's balances everywhere, right?
Yep. But I think at the same time, if you're a new developer or you're building an abstraction layer, it's all about that one step at a time heading to the side in one direction. So kind of, okay, I got one step forward. I understood that this works, or now this thingy does X and Y and Z. Like in the case of Waldeck CLI, the Office 365 CLI, one step at a time, introducing a new command and another command and a new feature and all of that. So it's basically evolving and realizing that it's one step at a time journey. It's not about reading a book and then be like, yeah, now I'm a champion. No, you're not. Books doesn't make you a champion or a master. You need to actually feel it by yourself or do it by yourself. So.
And also there is this thing that in a way you will never be done, because there will always be new operations. There will always be new things, and maybe on a rare occasion you will arrive to the point where that you will say, well, after all these years, with all these experiences, we have learned so much that really, in order for us to be able to move it forward, we need to introduce breaking change. We need to revamp things, because we learn new things. We learn things that we didn't know about initially. Now we do. And it makes sense for the way forward to change the way things work, right? And maybe that's just inevitable. This step where you will say, well, we need to break things for things to be better.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I mean, that's why there's a PnPjs v2, right? Is, you get lots of feedback from folks, which is wonderful. But you get some ideas that are really good ideas, but you can't implement them, right? With the way things are, you're like, well, that's brilliant, but the way we've done this, we can't do that right now, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think the people that submit those kind of ideas get frustrated because they're like, well, why can't you just do it, right? And it's like, well, because it's so much work, right? Like PnPjs v2 was, I think, probably over a year from when I really started thinking about it to when we did the actual V1 release. And there is got a ton of help from folks. Can't say thank you enough to that.
V1 release of V2, right?
V2, yeah, the V2.0. Sorry.
Yeah.
V2.0 release, but there's a lot of reimagining what can we do and taking into account a lot of that feedback we've gotten from people on, well, why can't I do this? Or why the big one we tackled, I think, obviously in the structure of the library was like, well, why is it so big? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Vesa?
But
okay? But it's a fair criticism, right? It's a fair comment, is like, well, it's so big because we've got all this code, because we get this feedback, why don't we support all these things? And it grows and grows and grows.
Yep.
And the way we had architected it, right, is that's the way it had to be. You could have it all, or you could have none of it. It didn't really fit, any kind of a selective model, or whatever. And that was a great piece of feedback, but is a perfect example of something that without, as Waldeck said, breaking everything and essentially starting over, we couldn't support, right?
Yeah.
And so it took a lot of thought to do. And I think, it can be a little confusing coming into V2 from V1 because things are pretty different. But I hope we've made a real effort with the documentation to help. We've gotten some good feedback on that. We've again gotten great help from folks on the documentation. Of course, it can be better. I always say that, but I think we've come a long way.
Yeah.
And but it really is a growth through destruction kind of operation, and
a collaborative outcome, working together with community,
and getting those ideas and sort of collecting them and letting them stew in your brain. And saying, these are great ideas. I want to support them, but we can't just do it right now. Like, it's a bigger thing than that.
And when I think about it, it's the same even with like SharePoint. Like, let's think about modern SharePoint experiences. Really? It needed to be reset because if we take the classic publishing, it worked fine for many, many years, more than a decade. But at certain points, considering the where the industry is heading and what kind of experiences we want to provide, there had to be this full reset, which is basically a modern experience, which is the de facto experience in SharePoint Online right now, versus the classic legacy experience, which would be the publishing. So,
well, plus, like if you think about it, the classic publishing experience is coming from 2006, which is different era, and also assumption that
almost like 2003 or 2004,
exactly,
because
right?
3 years
back
to
in
get
the
a
days,
shift.
everybody would run their own farm on their own boxes on their own desks. Nowadays, we are in a cloud where Microsoft serves millions of customers and whatnot. Like, some things are just not meant to scale and support, as you said, the demands of the market based on technology choices from 2003. Like, that doesn't add up. So at some point, we really need to make the hard choice. Like, if we are to move forward, then we need to make a drastic change, and that means that yes, maybe you will not be able to do everything you are used to, but we want to empower you to have similar result just via a different route.
Yep. And then if we even further extend on there, let's say outside of SharePoint, which is a good way of thinking this, is that then Teams UX, Teams integration with SharePoint and the Microsoft 365, all of that requires a completely new way of thinking, because it's been positioned as the landing solution where you start and work 8 hours in a day. So surfacing then SharePoint stuff there, but then other stuff there and all of that. So it's an interesting evolution.
Yeah, I mean, the whole web has evolved too in that time, right?
True.
So, I mean, you went from monolithic server-side applications that did all the work on the server side, and now you're seeing we all have essentially supercomputers on our desk, not as super as Vasa's computers he keeps around, but a modern laptop is beating a lot of servers from 10 years ago, right? So you're seeing more work shift to the client, much like SharePoint Framework, much like a lot of what Teams is working towards. Which, by the way, I don't know if I can say this, so I'll say it. Teams has made over the last couple of weeks a 6% improvement in core usage. So the usage they're making on server cores, right, which is fantastic. But you think about 6% over the scale of that 750% increase, right? It's massive. So these little wins, but all of that is enabled by getting to grow and evolve the technology. And I think a lot of the people in the industry are like, well, I know this. We have to keep this forever because I don't want to learn. It's like, well, sorry, that's not the way it's
right
business. It's not the way it's going to work. Things move really, really fast. And I think that's good.
And even if you think about the fact that, hey, but yeah, I'm a company, we have our own data center, can you actually make similar kind of improvements as what we did during these past weeks from a performance perspective related on different areas? There was a massive amount of stuff done in Office web applications, in Microsoft Teams, in SharePoint to reduce the load, so we can actually keep stuff up and running. And sure, we needed to reduce some of the video feed quality as well, but still, it's better than not having anything. And
but in a way, you actually could imagine in the office, like you have all these boxes, computers sitting in the office, like nobody's at the office. You could connect them into a network and have your beef up your servers.
True.
Yeah.
No.
But I think on the performance thing for folks that might, be facing that for their company, performance is a fight for inches, right? So you some people are like, well, I'm gonna fix this whole performance problem and everything's gonna be a million times faster, and that's never how it works, right? It's looking at taking, what operation happens the most, right? What's the thing we do the most? Can we improve that, right? So we get a little bit of improvement there, and it's these little incremental things, but they all add up to a huge, gain and improvement. And so I think, folks sometimes get a little too discouraged. Either they're not seeing big enough improvements, or they get a little navel gazy where they're like, I'm going to make this one method hyper optimized, right? And it's like, well, that might, if you're a financial institution doing 70 billion transactions a second or whatever, that can matter. But really, if it's like a web app, for example, server time should be minimal compared to transit time, right, over the wire. So you should, what can you do there? Can you have caching to improve wire time, right? There's a lot to performance. It's a big topic. But I know there's a lot of very smart people working very hard on it and doing great work everywhere, right? Not just Microsoft, but lots of places to keep everything running. It's really amazing.
Yeah. And considering the timeline this arrived on our table, nobody was ready. So that was just and now we need to actually
SPFX was optimized for this, right? Performance. PnP.
Well, PnPjs has been optimized from day one.
Exactly. Right? So now it's in chunks, like it's optimized. It's been Patrick, how much ahead of time did you know?
Well, not really at liberty to
neither
talk about
deny
that.
nor confirm this statement.
Not at liberty to talk about that. But it's no. But in all seriousness, like talking about optimization in PnPjs, we do make an effort to be as efficient as we can. But here's like a SharePoint quirk, right? Like when you update a list item, you have to have the list item type, right? So update a list item is 2 calls, right?
Yeah.
Or to create a list item is the same thing. It's 2 calls. You got to list item type, and you got to actually make the call, which is fine. Like that's just the way it works. But what's interesting is if you go look, because we now in version 2 are including the method information for the calls, which PowerShell's been doing for a long time. The core library's been doing for a long time. But for us, it's new, and adding a list item is basically like our number 1 call. Right.
Yeah.
So here's our number 1 call, takes 2 web requests to execute. And so, that's been in the back of my head of, is there anything we can do there to help with that? And I haven't come up with anything yet. So, anybody out there with ideas, I'm all ears, but it's maybe a new API method we could call that doesn't require that. FESA would be cool. I don't know, but so it's just interesting, stuff like that. It's those little things and thinking about them. And sometimes you just have to, like the other feedback we were talking about earlier, you just have to sometimes take that feedback, recognize it's good feedback and important, and stew on it for a while, right? Because there isn't an immediate answer, or there isn't like, I can't take this action right this second, but it's like, let me keep that in the back of my head. And maybe one day I'll be reading an article, or I'll be doing something else. Like the architecture for PnPjs v2, I was actually messing around with something else and looking at the TypeScript docs and how they were doing. I forget which part of the docs it's in, but they were doing, you can extend modules and classes with interfaces. It was something about, I think, and I might be wrong, so somebody could yell at me later, but I think it was in the section where they're talking about working with like JavaScript libraries that don't have any types. And JavaScript is an amazing and horrible language because you can kind of do anything you want. And they were talking about how to define in TypeScript some of these weird JavaScript-y things you can do, right? And I was reading through that, and that was the thing that was like, I bet that solves the problem for the V2.
JavaScript, SharePoint, they have very much in common.
Yeah, exactly. They work seamlessly together for that reason, I think.
Mysterious ways, right?
They were both born from chaos.
But those are those moments when you're like, why didn't I thought about this before? And it's like, whoa, what?
Yeah,
but it's
kind of like an idiot a little bit when you're like, oh, that's so duh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But that means also that you're evolving and thinking and learning and combining the information, and it requires some stewing time as well, like I said.
It does.
So,
it really does.
And also exposing yourself to other areas, right? Not just doing the one single thing, but also looking, as you said, at TypeScript, maybe at React, at Angular, like looking at different tools and basically trying to say, like, how do other people do different things? And then they're like, hey, why not combine this thing with this thing, and then you have this new thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of smart, clever people in the world doing lots of smart, clever things, and we now are uniquely positioned to, with the internet, you can learn from all of these people kind of like at once, right? And sometimes it's overwhelming, but it's also a great opportunity because you get to be exposed to all these ideas, and you might not like or agree with all of them, of course, but you get to see them and kind of internalize them. And I know, stuff I've seen various people do in the SharePoint community or not, right? I'm like, look at that idea. Maybe I can steal some of that, and use it for this or that or PnPjs or who knows. So, and and I think I would just say for people that are just getting started, it can feel overwhelming. I mean, it feels overwhelming to me, and I've been doing this at least a couple of years. And don't get discouraged, right? Just sort of take it slow. There's lots of, for everything now, there's lots of Hello World samples. There are lots of whatever. And then ask questions, I know in PnP we get lots of questions and we try and do our best to answer them. I don't know if we're always successful, but we try. And I know lots of other open source projects and lots of other places in the world, Stack Overflow, great example. Lots of places to find help too. But circling back a tiny bit, do learn a little bit too the underlying technologies, right? I think it's a blessing and a curse that it's so easy now to sort of like npm install the answer and just run with it and your problem is fixed. But take some time, because especially like if you look at SharePoint as a product, take some time to understand, for example, like site, web, list, list item, field, like understand those hierarchy and concepts, because then a lot of the other stuff starts to click into place, right?
Yep.
And it's the same for anything, right? Understand the Azure stack. You don't have to know every detail because Azure is unbelievably massive now with so much you can do. Yep. But understand a little bit like, resource sets and the different things and how they fit together. And it really, I don't think anymore it's possible to be an expert in everything that's happening because there's too much happening, right? Yeah. Like, I don't even think I'm an expert in SharePoint anymore. And I've been doing it, I don't know, however many years, however old I am now. So, because there's just too much. Yep. There's just too much. And so like I kind of like I got the REST stuff I'm pretty good at because I've spent a lot of time with it. And some of the other stuff I kind of get, but like, we get issues all the time that are like, can we call this REST method? I'm like, I didn't know it was there, but sure, man, we can call that, no problem. We can add it in. Yes, and it's easy to do, but like, since it's not my full-time job, I don't keep up with it day to day, right? I'm not checking, what methods got added on Tuesday or whatever. Yep. But when somebody brings it up, love it when we get those issues because absolutely, let's make things better for everybody. Yep. But it's a constant challenge. So don't get discouraged. Those of you out there who might be new or just learning or jumping into SharePoint or whatever, it's huge. But just take your time and you'll get there.
Well, but I guess like I recall first, like when I would start with SharePoint 2007, beginning of that, and I had to understand the difference between site collection and a site. It was like, I could not, for the love of God, I could not wrap my head around that. Like, so you have site collection and a site, and there's also a web. What? Oh wait, but the web is actually a site. But then there's the SP site. Like,
that's the naming challenges, which I don't know why we came up with that.
And then probably it's something that was picked up over time, but it started making sense when I look at the API, because then there was the SP site and SP web. Now I get it. Yeah. And then but these are all the things that nowadays are abstracted away, right? Because they're in a cloud. There is no way to get these DLLs. There is no way to look for us, how does it work behind the scenes? Like, there's none of that available, and probably the last book explaining that is from 2013, kinda.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. So if you are new, there might be still a need for you to get that book.
But it is important. Understand. Vase wants to move on.
I'm trying to go to the article.
We're not going to go to the article. We're just going to keep talking. I got 2.5 hours.
Okay, fine.
Go on to your article.
Okay, so let's get back up. Thank you.
You go on the
article. Okay, so let's do articles. Let's get back on the topic of things in a second, because we want to.
And in 2008.
It was the ancient Romans when they arrived to whatever. So
on the first CD with SharePoint BC 13 on it.
SharePoint BC 2013.
BC as in before Corona, and then AC as in.
Right? Yeah.
Now,
I hope that this is not such an event that will define an epoch.
Well, I don't think epoch, but I think it's hopefully it's a defining enough event of changing how we work and how we embrace.
Well, no, I'm just hoping we don't change our date system because of it.
Well, that's true as well. Yeah.
No. Second since the last case. Like, no.
Because if there's one thing as a developer I don't want is to deal with more dates.
But then again, there's a lot of people who know still COBOL, and they might be looking for a job. So you never know.
New Jersey needs COBOL programmers right now. So if you are a COBOL programmer and you see this, the state of New Jersey,
you listen to this show for some reason.
Yeah, you listen to this show. Maybe it comes up because we said COBOL like 6 times now, so it's going to come up in search. State of New Jersey, help them out.
Call all 900 COBOL.
No, Vesa, do your articles.
Yeah. They are not my articles. Community, Microsoft. Anyway, few news from last week. So big news on Tuesday last week. Is it Monday, Tuesday? That's Monday, 13th. Monday. So Office 365 was now officially finally renamed as a Microsoft 365. And if you're wondering, Microsoft 365 or Office 365 is basically a combination of Windows, Office, and enterprise mobility and security. That's basically the overall setup. And now finally we're moving into this world, which we knew that that's going to happen, where we renamed Office 365 as Microsoft 365. So let's stop using the Office 365.
So the one that I wanted to ask about
interesting for all of the accounts and Twitter accounts which are named using Office 365, but that's a separate thing. So
well, and also the interesting thing that I want to ask about, because the way I read the article is that Office 365 is not going away. It still stays there for enterprise plans, but the business essential and other things, these are only renamed.
A good question.
So
that
if you
goes way
if you scroll down, there's this big thing like, yeah, there you go. So Office 365 stays there. So it's like we're kind of doing the change, but then for some reason we're not. Like
yeah. Oh, there it is. All of the none of the plans are going to go away. Same plans are available, only with updated names.
Yeah, but then all the way up, you see now all 365 G1, G3, A1, A3. So it's like,
yeah. So let's see. The plans don't have any changes. That's fine. Interesting, actually. Good point. Now, I really thought that this was the massive let's change everything, but apparently, okay.
It would be easier.
Now, yeah, I think it would be easier, but it's good to be aware of this transition where we're heading, going through. Absolutely, and then obviously these are plans which only concentrate on certain areas of the Microsoft 365. I think that's the thinking behind of this. I'm not sure, to be honest.
And also maybe in a way, if we can speculate, maybe it's related to enterprise agreements that last number of years, and then you don't want to break them mid. Yeah, so maybe eventually it's going to change.
That goes to a section which I know Patrick is an old MCS consultant as well, Microsoft Consulting Services consultants. Every single time, one of the number one rules was do not
discuss licensing. Yes.
Because
rule number 2, still do not discuss licensing.
Yeah, exactly. See rule number 1. Now, this one was good. So there's an updated SharePoint roadmap pit stop from Mark Cashman.
Yep. If you go back for just 1 second, so I just want to call out for the small, medium businesses, especially universities or educational institutions, if you are impacted by the COVID situation, would love to hear from you and get you into FastTrack if you're looking to move to the Microsoft Cloud. We've got a lot of our requirements are potentially waivable right now in response to COVID, so would love to help folks out if you're having trouble and you're impacted. Would love to help you out. So you can reach out to me. I'll get you pointed in the right direction.
Yep. Thank you, Patrick, for that one. Now, coming back on the SharePoint roadmap pit stop, March 2020. This came live Monday, right after we actually recorded our session for last week. But big things, multilingual publishing for pages and news and communication sites are coming now as a GA feature. We will have a explicit 40 minutes in the upcoming monthly community call, PnP monthly community call, concentrating on this topic, which is pretty cool. So DC Padur is going to actually show and demonstrate how things are working and what are the setups. And cool. That's really for answering questions and all of that stuff. So new publishing commands have been added to SharePoint Pages library. So there are different publish and publish options and all of that available. SharePoint mobile app, adhere customized tenant themes and branding. We talked about this one actually last time. There was a blog post related on that one, but that's going out. This is the monthly summary of things. SharePoint root site map no longer restricted to customers with 10K users or more. Super important. So people can actually swap the root side of their tenant. Super classic ask. So they have created a cool looking site somewhere else rather than in a root. Can you flip that site to the root of the tenant? And answer is yes, you can. And that's pretty cool because then it can have contoso.sharepoint.com in this case. Yeah. Wiki notation for page links. So wiki notations do work in the modern pages now, which is really cool. Something
Nice.
which we had in the enterprise or in the old. So good that it's working now in the new as well. On the teamwork and integration with Microsoft Teams, a lot of improvements there. There's a new designed experiences on picking, for example, what's being surfaced, and there's further investments on this area in the future as well. So making it really easy then to surface the content from SharePoint inside of the Teams as a personal application or as a tab in there, and then making that as the default solution which people are using. Edit metadata from SharePoint document library and list view web parts. So basically, if you start editing, click edit in the web part, it will then spin up the right side panel, which is pretty cool as well. SharePoint list conditional formatting role builder, so additional improvements over there. There's some really exciting news coming up on those lists pretty soon. Happy birthday to Microsoft Teams, currently turned 3. That's actually pretty mind-blowing. Only 3 years.
Wow.
3 years?
How old am I?
Yeah.
Well, 5.
Then put stream videos on Power Apps on Windows Forms, producing live events in Yammer got easier. So a lot of improvements on the sibling solutions as well on how to make things happen. Audience targeting insights coming, footer, hub navigation, shareable address bar links coming in the April 2020. So a lot of stuff and announcements. And if you want to go to the details, to go to the article and have a look on that. This one is also super exciting. This came out on Friday, not necessarily the best timing for making announcements because part of the world is already on weekend. But hey, modernizing SharePoint managed metadata services, really cool.
Nice.
The UX is modernized, content type gallery, and we're looking into having those graph-based APIs finally out as well. So
exactly, there was something I was about to ask. Like, okay, so we have the UI. Will there be new APIs?
Graph APIs available for Microsoft MMS taxonomy. So there will be we're just scheduling that one right now, having negotiations with the people who own the Graph APIs that on what is the spot in our community calls when we will talk about this publicly. So hopefully within 2 weeks or so, we'll have at least 15 minutes and then a slightly longer potentially later. So we'll see how we can set it up.
Cool.
This one was interesting, well, not from the perspective that we're taking something away, but it also indicates where we're heading within the Office 365 or as a Microsoft as a whole, because differing end of support date for basic authentication in Exchange Online. So, and this gives an indication where we're heading with SharePoint as well. So sooner or later, the basic authentication patterns or let's say the account and a password model will be changed and it will go away because it's not as secure enough. So it's something to be aware on the movement going forward.
So that will be an interesting thing for client-side OM, right? Where this approach is being used a lot. True.
So basically, if you think about, for example, the PnP PowerShell usually supports certification-based authentication and the app only and a secret. So that's a completely different scenario then.
Yeah.
Rather than providing a user account and a password option, which isn't possible even for multi-factor authenticated tenants. So if the MFA is enabled in a tenant, it doesn't work anyway. So
yeah,
something which people should be always aware that the SharePoint Online credentials model potentially is going to go away, or there will be additional changes on that one. So, but this is a clear indication where we're heading. So. This one is just to share as well, new licensing options for Microsoft 365 for unattended scenarios. So they're basically changes over there and how to use those licensing options, just referencing the information on that one. I haven't actually gone in super detailed on what are the new options, but let's actually mention this one so that people can go and check it out if it's relevant for them.
It sounds a lot like creating a service account so that for the things that do require a user context, you can create an account that's actually not being used by a person, but it's just there for you to be able to automate things on behalf of an account as opposed to doing things only as an app.
Yep, absolutely. And that's basically Azure hosted whatever web jobs or scheduled tasks.
Function, exactly.
All in back and all of that. Now, this one is from you, actually, Waldek. Well,
Yes.
not you. You're one of the persons behind of the new, latest release on the CLI. So what's new? Well, we can see what's new from the.
Yes, so we have added a new command that allows you to retrieve the latest state of your tenant. So all the info across all services are there, degraded or operational, and so forth and so on. So you can now automate that. We have new reports for the Yammer usage, and then we've added some sample scripts. We've improved some commands. So I would definitely encourage everybody to give it a try, download it. And if you want to use the new tenant status command, you use CLI in the past, you will need to reconsent it because we've added a new permission in the AD app that's required by this API.
Yep.
So we have docs for all of that, so you can just give it a try and let us know what you think of it.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Great stuff.
Great stuff. Weekly progress, new versions coming out. This one was interesting from last week as well. So David Warner is leading this effort. Basically, you can now order Parker's Place is the name, and you can order PnP swag. So as an example, if we go to the Parker Porcupine, the original version, and there will be multiple adaptations apparently on these things. You can then see all of the different things which are available for you to pick on. I might actually order a cup. So, but all of the proceedings, basically all of the profits from this store goes to charity, which is a good thing. So it's a sharing is caring mentality, and there was already a discussions related on, hey, let's open up community designs because people have cool looking designs. So let's actually support them to get exposed through this UX so that people are able to get their own UX designs graphic designs being sold for charity using this store as well. And I think that's a great idea. So
yeah.
And we'll have more details on the charity stuff forthcoming once we get all that sorted.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
But tweet us pictures of wearing your PnPjs or whatever swag from the store. So
that would be pretty cool to see.
Excited to see that out there. So we get a little gallery of everybody wearing their stuff. Bonus points for leggings.
Oh yeah. So
anybody wants to get into those?
Where are leggings?
Some Parker leggings available.
Yeah,
it's a bold style choice, but
yeah.
Hey. Yellow. That's.
But cool looking stuff and a cool looking things. Absolutely, that's pretty.
Look at that
orange.
So, yeah,
I think you in an orange hoodie and some white leggings, Vesa. That's.
If this your thing, it's okay.
Make it happen.
I don't judge.
Yeah.
Who am I?
On the bombshell.
On that bombshell. So this is from Susan Hanley, SharePoint tips and resources for your COVID-19 communication site. So Sue is really great on let's say the functionalities and governance of things, and also what can be actually used and adapted by end users and enterprises. And basically a great summary on what's available, how to get started, what's the organizational side, what are the things which are available, start a new go away. Content pages and all of that, and obviously the content and samples which we've gone through in the past, we are also linked in here. So as an example, oh, where is it? Where's the mark? I know that it's in here. Oh, there we go. So as an example, just a reference, how to guide to build a crisis management communication site. And then obviously we have the lookbook design. People can easily set up their starting point for creating their own crisis communication site really easily. So pretty cool. This one, PnPjs. So Paolo has been doing a nice series. I think this is already episode 8. Yeah. That's pretty cool. So Paolo is actually covering PnPjs scenarios and how to get started on using different APIs and scenarios and things. So really cool stuff as well.
Yeah, these are great. Especially, I'll just give this a little bit more boost because if you're new to PnPjs or just trying to understand some of the V2 stuff, these are great videos. Like you said, there's 8 of them, and they start out and they kind of cover very simply all of the different pieces. So great videos. Definitely check those out for getting started. And as well, we've got some videos for getting started on our YouTube channel as well.
Yep.
But great stuff from Paolo. So I thank him for taking the time to make those.
Yep. Thank you. Crowd goes wild.
Do you know? Here's a random fact for you that I just learned that maybe everybody else on Earth knew, that modern car manufacturers, through your stereo speakers or sometimes dedicated systems, are now piping engine noise into the car, which I just learned. Like, apparently everybody else knew that. But yeah, so that's the thing that's happening. That's great.
Yeah, because like it's related to the emissions, right? So the engines have to be more efficient, and
they're so much more efficient. They don't make the sound.
Exactly. So like, where is the sound coming from? Well, from your speakers. It's just computer generated sound.
They've proven that cars with the system are sold more than cars without the system after a test drive.
Wow.
Of course.
But I was just
it makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I get it, but it was one of those like, really?
Everybody wants to have their 1.1 liter engine sound like a V12.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Cute.
Anyway, sorry.
Moving on. No, that's good. Moving
get on with your articles.
So this one is a good point from Microsoft Identity Development, MSID Dev. So basically, they're just shutting down this account in Twitter and basically merging everything to use Microsoft 365 Dev account, which is a just clarity on where is the official development guidance coming and what is the account to follow to keep up to date on things. And there it is from the Microsoft 365 developer as well. This one is from Joel Rogers. Yeah, send SharePoint items to second stage recycle bin with PnP PowerShell. So PnP PowerShell scripts and guidance and secrets and how we can move stuff and execute stuff using PowerShell. So really cool stuff as well. These are super helpful when you're trying to figure out, well, do something, and then you find this short blog post which are having the exact script which is needed. And this one actually is from Joel as well. So trigger when a file is created or modified in SharePoint. So how do we trigger and how do we do things and how do we fire and what are the options when a file is actually created in SharePoint? So a quick short blog post on that one. This one is from Hugo Bernier. He's now coordinating a lot of our sample work in the SPDFX web parts and extensions, and he has contributed by himself also this really cool adaptive cards solution. So basically a web part which is then able to adapt its presentation based on adaptive cards, and that's actually pretty cool. So super cool stuff, and it's a super clean implementation. Hugo does an awesome job on his samples, so have a look on that one. Absolutely.
How old are these screenshots that our stock price was $75?
Yeah, it's not 75 anymore. Or 175. 75?
Or is it again? No.
I'll be right back.
No, it's not.
This one is from Hugo as well. Display the solution version in your web part. So that's actually something which Bo George has its in community call, and that was actually kind of an interesting way. Obviously, you could use the maintenance mode of the page to see the version of the web part as well. But Treeville has a standard where they actually include the web part version to be presented in the property pane, which is actually quite convenient because then you can call to your customer and say, hey, can you put the page on the edit mode and check the version? Oh, now I know what's causing the issue. So having some sort of a more exposed information on that. So that's pretty cool. This one is from Michael Mendes. SharePoint HTTP connector send a no reply email from a specific sender name in a flow. So basically, how do we send those emails from flow with an information from SharePoint? So pretty cool flow integration as well. Super important for us to even further improve the Power Automate and Power Apps integration in the future. And there will be actually really cool stuff on that one announced more and more in the upcoming weeks and months and of that. So a lot of focus there. This is from Vera Sekar, SPFX export CSV using React CSV and Office UI Fabric control. Again, a nice explanation on how to make those things happen and export data from the list. Sure, this should be out of the box potentially, and there are scenarios and things how to make certain things like this out of the box, but it's nice to have also code examples on these things. Laura had a really nice article deleting the precious wiki tab as part of your team's treacherous wiki tab as part of your team's provisioning process. So basically, whenever you're provisioning a teams, there's always the wiki tab there by default, and then you could do something like remove it using Flow, and then get rid of it using the Graph APIs, if I remember correctly. So basically step by step on that one. And then a final kind of a note, please use the PnP hashtag PnP Weekly if you're writing something which is around the Microsoft 365, not just dev stuff, because we want to cover other stuff as well, and the dev stuff as well, so that we know what you have written on. So because otherwise we can't promote your awesome stuff. So
help us to help you.
Help us to help you. Cool. Let me actually stop that sharing, and let's get back on the discussions.
All right. So we stopped in 2008, right?
Yeah. So then 2009 comes.
Yes.
This is going to be like 3.5 hours.
Well, actually, I have to drop in 5 minutes. So
yeah, that's what I thought. So we've been going now more than an hour already, but good discussion. Any last words, tips, discussions, pointers from either one?
I would just say thank you to everybody for doing great work while I was out. Very much appreciate it. I know there's a lot of folks helping each other and got a lot of great. I think we had 10 or 11 pull requests when I came back. It's just awesome to see. I really appreciate that. I mean, people have been helping ongoing, but it's great to see coming back to that, and great to see as well a lot of the feedback and some issues and some enhancements. So we got all that in. Thank you. And we'll have a release going out for this Friday. Will be kind of our catch-up release. And that's going to end up being pretty big, actually, with all the work folks did and those pull requests. It's going to be a nice release, get some good stuff out there. And then
so Friday is a normal working day then in the US, or is it?
Is it not?
Because it's not in Europe.
Am I not working on Friday?
What's Friday? At least in Europe, Friday is off. So and Monday is off, actually.
Oh no! As far as I know, we're working.
Okay.
If we're not working, then maybe it'll be when we're working again. But no, plans for Friday. We'll have that release out. And then, but just thank you to everybody for all the help on that.
Waldek, any last words?
Using the minute that I have over, I'd like to share with everybody that we have extended the CLI maintainers team with Albert-Jan Schot, who helped us.
Happy.
Who helped us over time with a lot of stuff with CLI, and we thought, like, yes, there are more things that we want to do, and at some point, like, it's a side thing for all of us, and we would like to do more and more and more. So that's why I was like, yeah, you know what, it makes sense to extend the team, and with that, spread the lot, but also to be able to do more. Yep. So that's why we thought that we want to grow the team, and hopefully that will allow us indeed to do more and ship earlier some of the ideas that we have for improvement. So yeah, big change.
That's awesome. That's great stuff. And I'll just give another plug for the CLI to say it's a great place if you're looking to get involved and contribute. All of our stuff, you're absolutely welcome. Please contribute. The CLI is particularly nice because it's very atomic. You can work on one command, and whatever that command does, you can kind of build that and focus just on the one thing without having to maybe learn the entire thing. So it's a really great way to get started contributing, and it's really been awesome to see it grow. So great work, Waldek, and everybody on that team. So
absolutely
fantastic stuff.
And maybe related on that one, actually, just a let's say a hint or a let's say cliffhanger. Within a few weeks, we can announce some changes and updates related on the PnP team. We are aligned already internally with some of the MVPs, so we're growing the team. and we're publishing a kind of a new model for Microsoft 365 patterns and practices, so Microsoft 365 community, aka PnP work. So which then includes also guidance and processes related on our open source, all of the stuff what our MVPs are doing already, and how do we engage with them. But we'll release the new list of people, all of that stuff, I would estimate within a week or so, considering that Easter is coming now on Friday. So like I said, at least Europe is partly off from Friday to Monday. So
we want to be more open about open source.
Am I getting kicked off the team?
Well, if you didn't get the email yet.
Yeah. This is awkward, guys. This is how you tell me after however many years you invite me back on the call just to let me know. Cool. That's well handled. I like it.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna go back into my Greek villa and have some toast.
That bombshell and feta cheese. So.
Oh my God, the feta over there and the olives.
Oh yeah. The Greek salads. I'm just crossing fingers.
Go back to your story. Go back to
No. Let's hope that we get back on the traveling and everything can go back to normal as fast as possible. So I would love to go to Greece again to get some Greek salads and then souvlaki and a few other things. So, and in general, let's hope that this will pass as fast as possible. But I think that's it for now. So thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Waldek. And we'll be back with the new episode within a week. So let's do one more with everybody.
Thank you all for having me.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining us, Patrick.
Bye-bye.
Bye.